Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I'm Dashen, Usman. Here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin the news with the latest from events in Middle East conflict, where more than 100 Palestinians are reported to have been killed while waiting for aid to be delivered in northern Gaza. According to a Gaza emergency doctor, Israeli forces fired at the crowd and killing over 50 who rushed towards trucks loaded with humanitarian aid for residents. It happened hours before Gaza's health ministry announced that more than 30,000 people, including 21,000 children and women, had been confirmed killed since the start of the war between Israel and Hamas. A dire humanitarian crisis is unfolding in the war-torn territory, with food shortages greatest in the north of Gaza.
يتقوا الله فينا اولادنا ماتوا من الجوع راح يجيبوا لهم كيس طحين يطعموا اولادهم يصيروا اللي يدعسوا عليهم اللي يطخوا عليهم يعني احنا بيبعثوا لنا المساعدات عشان اليهود يطخوا اولادنا هذا غلط هذا مش صح هذا الكلام مش صح هذول الشهداء رقمة العيش يعني هم بيجيبوا لنا المساعدات يموتوا اولادنا يجيبوه الرسمي يجيبوهن لنا على كل واحد يجيبوا له مكانته مش هيك حرام عليهم بيرمون على البحر بيجيبوا الناس يموتوا الناس والله حرام والله حرام.
منذ صباح اليوم ونحن نستقبل في دار الشفاء الجثامين والجرحى ما يقارب من 35 إلى 45 شهيدا أتوا إلى دار الشفاء الطبي نتيجة لذهابهم للحصول على.
Meanwhile, Israeli sources confirmed that troops opened fire at Palestinians rushing towards aid trucks in Gaza, with one saying soldiers thought they posed a threat. The health ministry in Hamas-run Gaza said 104 people were killed and more than 750 wounded. Spokesperson for National Public Diplomacy Directorate of Israel, Avi Hagan, said the trucks were overwhelmed and the people driving the trucks, which were Gazan civilian drivers, plowed into the people, killing tens of people.
Entered the Gaza Strip and were overwhelmed by people attempting to essentially loot, to take that aid from those aid trucks. At some point, the trucks were overwhelmed and the people driving the trucks, which were Gazan civilian drivers, plowed into the crowds of people, ultimately killing, my understanding is, tens of people. I don't have anything more specific to that. It is unfolding.
Still speaking on the conflict, UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk says Israel's planned ground assault on Rafah in the Gaza Strip would contravene the orders issued by the United Nations highest court. He said the prospect of an Israeli ground assault on Rafah will take the nightmare being inflicted on people in Gaza into a new dimension. On January 26, the International Court of Justice in The Hague, while stopping short of ordering an immediate halt to the war in Gaza, said Israel must prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of the Genocide Convention.
The total number of people killed has exceeded 30,000. And tens of thousands of people are missing, many presumed buried under the rubble of their homes. This is carnage. The attacks on Israeli civilians on 7 and 8 October were shocking, profoundly traumatizing, and totally unjustifiable. The killing of civilians, reports of torture and sexual violence inflicted by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups, and the holding of hostages since that time are appalling and entirely wrong. And so is the brutality of the Israeli response. The war in Gaza must end. Clear violations of international human rights and humanitarian laws, including war crimes, and possibly other crimes under international law, have been committed by all parties. It is time, well past time, for peace, investigation, and
Let's also tell you that U.S. President Joe Biden says a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza was now unlikely to happen by Monday, the timeline that he had predicted earlier this week. Asked whether he expected the ceasefire to happen soon, Biden said he had been speaking to regional leaders about it, but added probably not by Monday.
Hope springs eternal. I was on the telephone with the people in the region. I'm still, probably not by Monday, but I'm.
Now we move to America, where Joe Biden and Donald Trump are both visiting the U.S.-Mexico border on Thursday, locked in a high-stakes political duel on an issue that could ultimately decide the U.S. presidential election. The border was crossed last year by 2.5 million undocumented migrants, an influx that has overwhelmed processing facilities and pushed social services in major American cities to the brink. The day provides an opportunity for Biden to try to convince voters he is serious about immigration, while Trump's own trip is yet another chance to shine a spotlight on an issue that has been the central focus of his political career. November's general election is expected to be a Biden-Trump rematch, although the two candidates have not secured their respective parties' nomination quite yet. Now joining us to give us more insight is our international correspondent, Afua Hagan. Now, Afua, is it a coincidence that both Trump and Biden are visiting border towns at the same time? Do you think Biden's visit is another indication that Democrats are scrambling to respond to an area of perceived weakness?
Well, it's a match or a clash of schedules, whichever way you want to look at it, that you have both of these, potentially both the candidates for the Democratic and Republican nomination. It looks like it's going to be two of them head to head in the general election in November. They're both visiting border towns. Now, Biden is visiting Brownsville and Trump is visiting Eagle Pass. And these two towns lie right on the American-Mexican border. And of course, that's where you have seen something like 2.5 million migrants cross in 2023 alone. Now, Trump said that he announced his visit quite a while ago, that it's always been in the diary. And then Joe Biden announced his visit earlier on this week. He said that he always had it in the diary as well. And it just so happens, by his words, he said, I planned for Thursday. What I didn't know that my good friend apparently is going to. So it looks like the Democratic Party and Joe Biden as the president have been caught off the back foot and are catching up with Trump and catching up with what his campaign are doing. And by going to these border towns and really feeling the pulse of the voters. And this is something that Joe Biden really needs to do. He really needs to get out there and get on the ground and see what people are seeing and feeling about the really, really big issue of immigration.
All right, Afua, now more than 6.3 million migrants have been detained crossing into the U.S. illegally. That's during Biden's term in office. And it's actually a number or a higher number than under previous administrations. Is this a serious political problem for Biden?
It is getting to be a serious political problem. But Joe Biden and the Democratic Party want people to think that Trump is making it into the problem, that Trump is the one who's really raised the issue of immigration. And in fact, there's other things that people are worried about, like jobs, the economy, and the cost of living. But it is getting to be a serious political problem for Joe Biden. Along with the economy, polling, when we do polling, it consistently ranks as one of voters' dominant concerns, and the vast majority of people disapprove of how disapprove of how President Joe Biden is handling or not handling this issue of immigration. Now, in Eagle Pass, for instance, lots of people are coping with broken infrastructure, with an influx of people into the town, and then lots of those people are then bused to other places like New York, Chicago, which is also feeling the effects of broken infrastructure. So it is a big issue, but there's other issues at play here in this election. Post-pandemic jobs, the right to life, which is a huge issue as well when it comes to this election. But it's definitely one that Joe Biden cannot afford to ignore.
All right, so now these immigration facilities are set to be overwhelmed. So what is actually being done in the U.S. to try and fix the so-called problem of immigration?
Well, you have had some times, like Eagle Pass, where the governor there defied the rules and has put up some quite cruel barbed wire and some fencing, you know, sort of akin to what Donald Trump wanted, which was remember the build the wall chant he had? That's what he was going for during his election time. It's not a wall effectively, but it has been increased security, and that is happening in some times. But what really needs to happen is you really need to drill down on the reasons why people choose to make these border crossings in the first place, which aren't very safe, which are quite dangerous, which come with their own risks. And I think if that's something that America can really drill down on, the reasons why people want to try and get into America, that's where you're going to really try and solve the problem of such high illegal immigration.
All right, Afua. Now, Trump is actually visiting Eagle Pass. That's the Texas border town where Republican Governor Greg Abbott has defied the White House by using state National Guard soldiers to detain undocumented migrants and erect border barricades, including razor wire fences, that critics have actually said are inhumane. Now, what do you make of these somewhat aggressive measures?
Well, these measures, clearly some people in their towns like Eagle Pass feel that they are necessary, feel that that is something they need to do to protect their town. And that goes to show how much pressure somewhere like Eagle Pass feels that it is under when it comes to jobs, when it comes to infrastructure, if they feel that they need to use such aggressive measures to keep people out of the town. Now, it may be seen as inhumane, and it may be seen as breaking human rights laws. But like I said, if you really want to solve the problem of immigration, it's about drilling down into the reasons why immigration is so high in the first place. Is it perhaps because the legal routes into America are too difficult or too restrictive? Is it because of the economic crises elsewhere? There's lots of things to look at when it comes to immigration. It's a very complex issue, and it's not just as simple as people getting into small boats or people trying to cross into America. It is a really, really deep and complex issue, and one that can't be solved just by putting up a barbed wire fence.
All right, well, thank you so much, Afua Hagan. And now we head to South America, where Brazil's finance minister called Thursday for an international plan to ensure the world's super rich pay their taxes, urging G20 nations to adopt a shared stance on preventing billionaire tax dodging by July. Finance Minister Fernando Haddad told his counterparts from the group of 20 leading economies in Sao Paulo that billionaires of the world are still evading tax systems through a series of strategies. Brazil, the current president of the G20, whose members make up 18% or 80% of the global economy, is pushing the group to cooperate on tax policy amid global wrangling on how to deal with the so-called race to the bottom, where some countries woo corporations and the super rich with zero or ultra-low taxes.
Apesar dos avanços recentes, é um fato inquestionável que os bilionários do mundo continuam evadindo nossos sistemas tributários por meio de uma série de estratégias. O mais recente relatório do EU Tax Observatory sobre evasão fiscal demonstrou que bilionários pagam uma alíquota efetiva de impostos equivalente a entre 0,5% de sua riqueza. Colegas, eu sinceramente me pergunto como nós, ministros da Fazenda do G20, permitimos que uma situação...
The news continues in Europe, where President Vladimir Putin has praised Russia's troops fighting in Ukraine as courageous warriors who will not back down in the closing remarks of his State of the Nation address on Thursday. According to him, the soldiers will not fail and will not betray the country.
Знаете, смотрю на этих мужественных людей, порой совсем молодых ребят, и вот без всякого преувеличения могу сказать, сердце наполняется гордостью за наших людей, за наш народ и за конкретно этих людей. Такие, безусловно, не отступят. Не отступят, не подведут и не предадут. Вот они и должны выходить на ведущие позиции и в системе образования, воспитания молодежи, и в общественных объединениях, в госкомпаниях, в бизнесе, в государственном и муниципальном управлении, возглавлять регионы, предприятия в конечном итоге.
Still in the country, Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned the West that Russia has weapons that could strike within their territory. Speaking during his annual State of the Nation address, stated and that the West is creating a real risk of nuclear war that could cause the destruction of civilization.
Что все они придумывают сейчас, чем пугают весь мир, что все это реально грозит конфликтом с...
In the meantime, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says he will not be sending any soldiers from Germany to the conflict in Ukraine following statements by French President Emmanuel Macron about the possible deployment of Western troops. Analysts have warned that Macron's refusal to rule out sending Western troops to Ukraine has exposed deep divisions with France's traditional partner Germany, which could play into the hands of Russia.
Und wird keine Kriegspartei. Dabei bleibt es. Wir wollen nicht, dass der Krieg Russlands gegen die Ukraine zu einem Krieg zwischen Russland und der NATO wird. Darüber sind wir uns mit allen unseren Verbündeten einig. Das bedeutet auch keine deutsche Kriegsbeteiligung. Um es klipp und klar zu sagen, als deutscher Bundeskanzler werde ich keine Soldaten unserer Bundeswehr in die Ukraine entsenden. Das gilt, darauf können sich unsere Soldatinnen und Soldaten verlassen. Und darauf können Sie sich.
Away from that, Western Balkan leaders have pushed to speed up economic reforms in exchange for financial aid and an accelerated path to EU membership. They gathered at a summit in the Albanian capital to discuss the European Union's plan to boost its integration with the region's economies. The bloc has vowed to help double the economy of the Western Balkans over the next 10 years with a €6 billion growth plan. It involves opening up a part of the European single market, establishing a common regional market, reforming the region's administration and justice systems, and fighting corruption.
For the first time, we all in the Western Balkans agree that European Union is doing not just the business as usual, but an extra mile to come closer to us, to support our economic growth and our integration. Today we had also a joint statement that every country, all the six, have agreed. We have to do this. It doesn't matter what political problems we have with each other. It doesn't matter.
According to our modest calculations, this plan, together with the economic and investment plan, you should combine always these because one is built on top of the other. The region should be able to double its economy.
And now we move to Asia, where hundreds of houses in Kampung Sawah, a dense residential area in Kekung, East Jakarta, have been flooded after prolonged torrential rains in the Indonesian capital. According to local residents, the flood water has reached as high as 1.2 meters, affecting more than 300 people.
Diperkirakan sekitar jam 3 ya, jam 3:30, 4. Itu air naiknya lumayan cepat juga itu. Untuk ketinggian terakhir tadi sebelum berangsur surut ini ada di sekitaran 1 meter sampai 1,20. sampai 1,2 meter.
Hujan nggak berhenti, terus dalam dah. Pada berenang segini air. Udah itu semua kerendam semua habis. 4 orang, anak 2 sama suami saya.
Di rumah semua nggak ada yang ngungsi?
Di rumah semua.
Lawmakers were sworn in during the first sitting of Pakistan's new parliament Thursday, 3 weeks after an election marred by widespread allegations of rigging. Pakistan's February 8th poll took place with ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan jailed and barred from running and his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party targeted by a campaign of arrests and censorship. Khan's followers defied the crackdown to win more seats than any other party, but the military-backed Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz is set to shut them out of power with a coalition government. According to the coalition agreement, former Premier Shehbaz Sharif, who ousted Khan in a 2022 no-confidence vote, will be elected Prime Minister again by new lawmakers in the coming days. And that's all on Beyond the Continent. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen, Usman.